Future Welders, we're back with another video from Ameriarc Welding Academy. My name is Andre Williams. Today, I am gonna give you a quick tutorial on torch cutting. We're gonna be using an oxygen-acetylene process. I'm gonna cut a few different thickness steel, and I'm gonna show you how I set up, show you everything that I go through, the type of tip that I use. First, let's start with the oxygen. Everyone in the industry, they use different type of settings. I'm only gonna tell you the setting that I use and what works for me. For many other seasoned welders in the industry, they definitely have different settings that they go by. As for me, I always set the oxygen at 40, all right? I set my oxygen for 40. For some people, they may say that's kind of high, but it's one, set it and forget it. It doesn't matter if I'm cutting 1/8 thick steel or 1-inch thick steel. I pretty much set this at 40. I set my acetylene at 10. So I'm setting the acetylene at 10, oxygen at 40, all right? When I open up the acetylene, I only give it a little half a turn, just like a one turn, all right? The oxygen, I can open up all the way. Because, God forbid, if there's an emergency, or if you have to come over and shut the bottle real quick, you just pretty much just have a turn of, one turn on the acetylene, all right? They also call this fuel. So a lot of times, let's come over here and look at the torch. A lot of times on the torch, it says F, all right? F stands for fuel and the O stands for oxygen, all right? Right now we're using a Victor style torch, which has three valves on it. This oxygen valve pretty much stays open, all right? And this oxygen valve and this oxygen valve is actually operating on the same line. So this oxygen valve stays open. This valve at the bottom stays all the way open, all right? And the one up top actually is closed. So the way I turn on my torch, for one, please pay attention to this. Every time I pretty much ignite the torch, I always have the striker in my hand, okay? I don't turn on the acetylene, right, or fuel, whichever one you want to call it, and then go look for my striker, all right? Because now you're just wasting the acetylene, and then it's just filling the air with acetylene, which may cause a big kind of flash, all right? So I always have the striker in my hand. I crack the fuel, the acetylene valve, just crack it, okay? Now I can put my striker away. When you first crack the acetylene valve, you have like a dirty soot type of smoke in the air, all right? So you open this valve enough to get a cleaner fire, all right? Get rid of the soot. Now I open my oxygen. All right, I open my oxygen, and what I'm looking for right here is for those cones coming off the torch to be nice and clear. HD effect, okay? Now I'm gonna test my cut. If I test it and it still looks good, those cones are still nice and sharp, that's what I'm looking for. All right, now I'm gonna purposely go down on the oxygen a little bit. If you notice, if you don't have enough oxygen, how hazy it looks, even if you pull the trigger, it's kind of hazy, it's not sharp. It almost looks like a bad dream. Give it a little bit more oxygen. You can even hear the way it sounds. It sounds more like a rocket, right? Now I test the cut, pull the trigger, and as you can see, I still have a nice clear blue flame. It's nice and clear, all right? That's what I'm looking for. I'm gonna cut, first cut I'm gonna do is 1/8 plate. This plate is a thin 1/8 plate. I'm gonna show you that, I'm just gonna make a small cut, and I'm gonna show you that I'm using a number 1 tip. Let me not forget about that, number 1 tip. I'm gonna show you that it doesn't matter. My oxygen is set at 40, my acetylene is set at 10. A number one tip, doesn't matter the thickness of steel, I can still cut them all the same. The first thing I like to do is I like to preheat. Always preheat, it's gonna make the cut smoother. Now, because this is a thinner material, I don't need to preheat as long. Don't bury the tip. All right, as you can see, if you see the material that I cut is a very thin material. It's 1/8 sheet steel. This is half inch steel. Again, I have a number one tip on the torch. I'm gonna preheat. I like to preheat the material because steel holds moisture. Wait till it turns cherry red. You have to wait, let it turn cherry red, blow through. Keep the torch about a ½ inch away. Do not bury that torch into the steel. Again, you preheat. I'm gonna move on to a 1-inch thick piece of steel. This is 1-inch thick. I'm not changing my settings on my oxygen or acetylene, okay? I'm still using the same settings. I preheat. Always preheat because steel holds moisture, and the thicker the material, the longer you might have to preheat. So this piece of plate that I'm about to cut is 1-inch thick. Again, I do not change my settings. I don't even change the tip that I'm using. I'm using a number one tip. Now, granted, if we go into like 2-inch steel, you might have to use a much larger tip. I'm gonna preheat, let it turn cherry red. Once it turns red, keep the tip of the torch about 3/8 to a ½ inch. Move nice and slow. Here's my technique of how I shut off the torch. This is just the way I like to shut off the torch. Personally, I like to turn the oxygen off first. Then I turn off the acetylene, okay? And let me explain to you why. The reason why I turn the oxygen off first, right? Some places you may hear them say you turn the acetylene off first. But the reason why I like to turn the oxygen off first is because the acetylene is the fuel which you can see a fire and you know that that valve is still open. If you're a new welder and you forget to cut, if you cut the fuel off first, which is the acetylene, you can't see the oxygen. Now, someone distracts you, calls your name, you put it down, now you have an empty bottle of oxygen when you come back to it because you didn't pay attention that you didn't cut the oxygen off. So that I'm aware, or what I teach students so that they're aware, cut the oxygen off first and then cut the acetylene because that lets you know all valves are shut. That is my tutorial on torch cutting here from Ameriarc Welding Academy. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Check us out on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We are all over the place. We're located in Inglewood, New Jersey. My name is Andre Williams. I'll see you on the next one.